a documentary film about the atrocities and horrors committed by the occupiers and their supporters in the Charkh district of Logar province.
Sardar Agha's wife
came out of her house and was targeted because no one could take her away. When he was injured, another of my brother's wife came out from another house to help us. Suddenly the mortar hit her. Both her legs were cut off.
They told us that they would protect us, but their protection was this, that they were hitting us every day.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
A city where science and mysticism are intertwined with the name of Maulana Muhammad Yaqub, the residence of the renowned scholar and Sufi. Its natural beauty reflects the creation and motifs of God Almighty, which is a sign of His endless power. It has been manifested in the valley of Maulana. People with hearts full of love, filled with the light of true faith, and supportive of jihad and the mujahideen. But 20 years ago, this land border in the geography of Afghanistan was invaded by the tyrannical forces of America and their allies. The infinite cruelty and terror inflicted upon its people have made the expression of that pain as solid as the base of the Hindu Kush mountains and as vast as the grief of Dasht-e-Lili and the sandy deserts of Helmand, an anguish that cannot be fully expressed or captured by pen. Continuing to document the occupation, oppression, and terror perpetrated by the Americans in Afghanistan, we are going to the district of Charkh, where thousands of unspoken words remain. No media outlet has adequately expressed the truth of the terror and occupation inflicted by the Americans. Defenders of human rights and saviors of women's rights, or violators of human and women's rights. His name is Azmuddin. He is a resident of Charkh district, and he is an eyewitness of hundreds of tragic incidents by invaders in this district. Azmuddin remembers the bitter events of the war with a heavy heart and talks about the bitter memories.
There were only 8 security checkpoints at the top of the mountain. These 8 checkpoints would fire at anyone they saw on the way. They would shoot them. This is how it was. Only in our area, where I am not from this village, approximately 13 or 14 women were targeted.
Sardar Agha's wife
Came out of his house and was shot by them. She lied in the ground for 3 hours and no one was able to carry her out. Also, some were shot while sleeping, some were shot awake, some were shot while walking, and some were shot on their way to school. These were the problems. Even I was wounded. Just like this, Juma Gul's son was on his way. He was young. The army attacked him from behind, and he was martyred. All the people were looking at him as he was made a martyr, along with thousands of people his age.
Mullah Hayatullah is another resident of this district. He also has bitter memories of the occupiers and talks about the incidents of war and occupation.
The American soldiers who entered the area committed a lot of serious violations. They conducted such raids at night, where children were martyred. They martyred the young men, they even martyred them in front of their brothers and sisters. They martyred husband in front of his wife. They martyred their sons in front of their mothers. The difficulties were past in Charkh. The people would not remember all of it, and let me say that this was the feeling of hardships every day, like each night was passing as doomsday.
Asmuddin expresses his grievances with the international community and the American forces, who see themselves as scholars and defenders of human and women's rights worldwide. He highlights the killings and injuries inflicted on women, as well as on the men and women in this district, emphasizing the deep wounds that will not be forgotten.
In this village of ours, more or less 120 people, some were injured or some were martyred, including 5 people from Bilal's house.
Nuruddin's wife
Was martyred here. Mr. Shamal's son was martyred here. Qazi Gul's wife was martyred. Mobin's wife was martyred.
Amruddin's sister-in-law
Was martyred. Tandi's mother was martyred, all in one place. So there were injuries and martyrdoms, but they still claim human rights and women's rights.
Nasir Ahmad,
whose wife and son were seriously wounded during the war by a mortar shell fired from the district near their home, and whose brother's wife lost her legs, narrates his painful story as follows.
It was time for prayer in the morning. After I prayed, I put my head back in my place, so that it will be light, until we can go to our work or business. Suddenly, I saw that the mortar came and hit the yard away, so when we wanted to arrange ourselves to go from one house to another house, where there was a shelter, when the mortar came and targeted my wife, when we tried to take her away, my son came out and was injured. The child was 5 years old at that time. It was almost hit in his abdomen. His eye was also hit by a bullet, which damaged his eye. He was also hit in his fingers and the foot. My brother's wife had one leg amputated in one place and the other leg in another place. Another year, my brother's wife and my nephew were injured.
Bilal Ahmad,
The brother of
Bashir Ahmad,
speaks about the hardships of his life. His wife lost both her legs due to a mortar attack on their home. With a heart full of sadness, he shares that his wife was pregnant at the time, and their unborn daughter, who was in her mother's womb, suffered a brain injury as a result of the attack. Unfortunately, their daughter died 7 years later.
My wife has both her legs amputated. One of my daughters was injured. She was paralyzed. She was alive for 7 years, then she passed away. 1 month was left that she was about to be born, but she was injured in her mother's womb. When her mother had fallen, the child's head was flattened. She couldn't move her arms and legs anymore. She couldn't recognize anyone. She couldn't chat. She couldn't hear. She was paralyzed as she was alive for 7 years. After 7 years, the child died. For 7 years, I saw a lot of hardships. I saw a lot of difficulties. Even if she heard a lot of noise, she was fainted. One of her hands, one of her legs was shaking. She was afraid of something. If the gate was opened, she was 24 hours fainted. She was so sick. She was so weak. She couldn't ask for bread. She couldn't say whether she was thirsty or hungry. I don't understand that her stomach was full when she died. All the people say that human rights are trampled on, that women's rights are trampled on. Where was it not trampled on at that time? When they say that they are trampled on, at that time, children's rights were not known. Women's rights were not known. Women were martyred. Babies were martyred in their mother's womb. What kind of law was this? What was his sin? This house, for example. What was wrong with the house? There was no enemy in my house that they attacked my house. We are known to the whole region. We were just mercenaries. We didn't belong to any group or band. We were going to work and coming back home at night. Even we're not safe during the night. There was a base at the top of the mountain. From here, they were killing people on the way. The wounded were walking on the way when they were targeted.
They shout about women's rights, human rights. Hundreds of women were martyred in Afghanistan that people did not find their bodies. This is women's rights. That human rights say, people's children's limbs jumped in the trees. This is human rights. Women's rights that whatever they say, did not reach the place. It is all an exaggeration that they do on this soil of Afghanistan.
The occupiers and their supporters, who consider themselves defenders of human rights, invaded this land under the pretext of protecting those rights and established bases and checkpoints. They violated human rights. Our Muslim and faithful people could not even imagine peace, as they could not safely go to mosques or markets to carry on with their daily lives and worship their religious rituals.
Hold the ground there.
When the American forces stepped here, they made a lot of bases. They created checkpoints from the road up to in front of our house until the place was covered with shells. Our public mosque was under their checkpoint base. We were all stuck under the punishments.
We were sitting in this area when the military forces came. We told them. We went there again in front of the mosque that for the sake of Allah, don't make this base here. It is harmful to us. In our home, we would be dishonored. They said, we would protect you. But their protection was that they were hitting us every day.
Our house was mortared from the district itself, and in one case Iqbal Shah's wife was martyred. Iqbal Shah's wife was martyred when we came. 3 of us were wounded by the time we were taking her deceased body away. When we took the permission, we buried her. We were under punishment a lot. They were taking out our women, our elderly men, our youth. They would imprison them in the bases. We faced a lot of hardships.
Amir Shah is another resident of Charkh district who lost his son during the unequal war with foreigners. He describes the cruelty and oppression of the soldiers of the Kabul administration.
The oppression was so smooth that there were the same people in these areas. Everywhere they pointed out to take this person. This same person is involved in the Taliban in the Islamic Emirate. I have forgotten the year. It was 13 of the Saratan month. The plane came and targeted my nephews. After that, 2 of my sons named Barkatullah and Hikmatullah. The base was nearby. 2 of my sons were dragged from the house. They took them. There was a container. They hung them in the container. I was in Kabul. I called no to let them to take the boys in the province. They freed 2 people. I went to the market and bought 2 kilos of meat. I cooked it in the same house and ate together. I released 2 of my sons with give 10,000 back. They said that I had forgiven 10,000. I said coldly, "You didn't have a loan that you forgave it." "Yes." I said, "Give me my money back. Go and take both of my children." Both of them were in the same house. The housekeeper said, "Come back." Then they released me. The house is here. They were sitting here. It was 11 o'clock. They targeted them. There was nothing. There was no war. I was at home in the fog. I sat at home again. I was awake. Our gate was knocked. I come out quickly. I said, "What's the matter?" They asked me to get out. When I came here, they had martyred my mother. I was knocking everyone's door, but no one came out as it was night. I was with 2 women. We went to the mosque. There was a bedstead and we took her in the room. After that, in the morning in the funeral ceremony, the commander came and said I was the one who shot him. He himself told us. So, we have faced these much hardships.
The occupation and aggression are tragic phenomena that devastate the lives of individuals and create countless hardships for those living amidst war. It has claimed the life of a child from one family, a father from another, and a mother or wife from yet another.
The mortars were coming from every side. The women were hidden in the basement. A woman came out of her house. The mortar came from the district and hit her in the head. We could not take her body as we concerned what to do as she was injured. Finally, 2 of us came and we took Iqbal Shah's wife in the province. When we brought her deceased body from the province and put in front of her house, there was still mortar coming from the base. Then 4 of young youth took her deceased body and were carrying to her house. But they targeted these 4 people and they were injured. The dead also fell in the ground. After that they again shot 10 or 20 bullets in her dead body until we sent an elderly man there and took the permission. Then we carried the dead body there. Then we took that to Logar and buried there.
Even when we were commuting to bazaar to buy goods, it was difficult to come back. When we were passing by, there were the ways. One way was this, another was that way. They were shooting from there. I don't know whether they were targeting us intentionally or they would consider us their enemy. We could not come from those ways. We were just coming from this alley along the wall, as you see the alley along the stream. We didn't have any other way. Even we could not walk till morning if there was a dead body. We would wait until the morning begin and then we would come out. After that we would go for buying our goods. When we were sitting there, they would point out us by laser, calling us why we sit there. We could not sit near the mosque. They targeted our mosque many times. All the houses are targeted by the mortar. As you see, that boy is busy building his house. We had a lot of hardships in every aspect.
The passenger who could never reach his house. Jamaluddin, who has spent several years of his life witnessing many revolutions and developments, is pained by the oppression and terror inflicted by the invaders and has lost the ability to speak. He has lost 3 members of his family and recounts the tragic incident of his brother who went out to trade and find halal food for the family. His brother was arrested by invaders' spies and martyred after being imprisoned for a time.
My brother
went to Jalalabad for business to bring halal food for the family, but by the wrong report of the spies, he was taken. We were informed about him here. When we moved from here, we looked everywhere. We asked wherever we had familiarity with someone in the previous government. Finally, we found him after a couple of months in the campaign. In the big campaign, we took his old clothes and gave her new clothes. The next day we went to release him. But that day when we went there, they told us that we had released that guy during the night. We asked them how did they release him, as we hadn't seen him, but it was unclear. We looked for him for 6 months but couldn't find him.
After 6 months, I was irrigating in the garden when a nomadic guy called me that a martyr is lying here. When I went there and sat in the tent, he told me that there was a martyr. When I reached there, I saw that his beard and hair were all cut off. He was hit by a big stone and his head was hit by something harsh. Only his body was left. So I took him and checked his pocket. I found his identity card and 2,000 rupees, and I brought him. We faced a lot of cruelties at that time.
I swear to God that even when I eat food, their faces browse my mind. The same face, the same character come to my eye. I was inflicted with mental problem. I used to consume medicine for 6 months. I have not gotten well yet.
After 20 years of fighting and the shedding of the blood of thousands of martyrs in the cause of truth, and relying on the will and victory of Almighty God, the forces of the Islamic Emirate and the Mujahideen have humiliatingly expelled the enemies from this country and restored security and peace for the oppressed nation again. People express their happiness about the Islamic system and return to their homes in the shadow of peace and security and continue their daily lives. People say that in the existence of the Islamic system, they can go about their daily affairs with a calm mind and without war.
People became homeless as a result of war here. Our children could not go to school. They could not educate themselves. Now we thank our God that our country is secured and safe.
We had a lot of hardships. Now we can do our routines peacefully whether it is day and night since they had left.
He was innocent. They raided his house. That day was a terrible day. The raid began on the same day on Charkh district. After that it continued.
I was at the gate when they fired 4 or 5 shots and hit him.
The first time my brother was martyred and later my father was wounded. And he entered a mosque.
This was one of the example documentaries showcasing the horrors of the invading forces in the Charkh district of Logar province that we presented to you. You can watch this documentary in English on the National Television of Afghanistan and its social media pages. As a national and people's voice media outlet, we aim to showcase the crimes committed by the invaders in this land, and we have tried to document some of the crimes and incidents committed by these invaders in the Charkh district of Logar province. If you have witnessed such incidents, you can contact us via WhatsApp at 074 434 3668. We are here to amplify your voice and reach it to the ears of the international community.